coming. I'll be kind of your host, I suppose, in a way. I kind of want this to be like a non-formal, fun thing for you guys to just, have a look at what we're doing, what we're presenting, and so I'll be going first. So, I'm Maya, nice to meet you all, and I have endometriosis. There you go. And so, what is endometriosis? So, you can't really see it very well, but endometriosis is where the cells similar to those in the lining of the womb, the uterus, grow in other parts of the body, like the ovaries and fallopian tubes. It can also affect organs such as the bladder and the bowel. And I don't know if you can see this diagram, it's a bit sunny, but it's basically these, they grow in different areas and they can cause pain. And during menstrual cycles, they're kind of, the way that doctors have explained it to me is they're like tiny little blisters that grow on the uterus. And when you have your period, obviously everything inflames and they kind of pop, so they're painful. And so, this is basically, I'm just going to yap for a little bit about my story in terms of my experience with endometriosis. So, endometriosis in general, women usually get, or anyone with a uterus that has endometriosis, will usually get diagnosed between the ages of 30 to 40, and I'm 21, and I have my diagnosis at 18 years old, because mine was very progressive. And so, the first instance where I believe I was experiencing full-on endometriosis symptoms, that includes pain, was probably about 13 years old, was the first time that I'd officially gone to the doctors and essentially harassed them about awful period pain. And so, being, a young girl growing up, doctors did not take me seriously whatsoever, because this was normal, girls growing up, we get pain, we get periods, but obviously it turned out that I had endometriosis. And so, it took about 5 years of arguing and bickering with doctors to have my pain taken seriously. And so I think I was on the waiting list, finally, for a laparoscopy, and I was about 16 years old. That's when I got placed on the waiting list. And a laparoscopy is also known as keyhole surgery, where you go under and they insert 3 holes and they basically inflate your stomach, and that way, if you have like appendicitis and you need your appendix removed, it's a similar surgery. But in this case, it's more of an investigation where they'll, have a look, have a search to see if they found endometriosis tissue, and they did. And so I went in when I was about 18 years old, and that was the second surgery I'd actually had, because they thought that I had appendicitis when it was actually endometriosis the first time. But they took out my appendix as a precaution, so technically I've had 2 surgeries in relation to endometriosis. So yeah, that was when I was 18. So that's pretty much a bit of a rundown about my personal story with endometriosis. And I want to talk about the gender health gap, because I think this is also really important in terms of the way that women, females, are typically really uncared for in GP practices and just general healthcare. And so the gender health gap specifically relates to the lack of equality concerning healthcare for women and men. But I'm more so speaking about on women's behalf. And so I have a couple fun but also eye-opening facts. So the UK is the 12th largest female health gap globally, which is shocking considering we're considered such a developed country. And then endometriosis affects 1 in 10 women in the UK, which is a crazy amount. It's very common. And to put it in perspective as well, endometriosis in women is more common than asthma and diabetes. And yeah, again, it takes an average of 7.5 years to get diagnosed. I was lucky in the fact that it took about 5 years for me to get diagnosed. But usually it's about 7.5 years for someone to get a diagnosis. Yeah, an average of 10 doctor's appointments to be referred to a specialist. So that's just GP appointments. And even then, when you go to speak to a specialist, you're then referred to other specialists again and again. So this is just getting your foot in the door. It's about 10 appointments with endometriosis, if that's what you're thinking to have and going through. Yeah, women are diagnosed later than men in over 700 diseases, including cancer. And then 2.5% of all UK healthcare funding goes towards women's reproductive health, despite that gynecological issues can affect over half the UK population, essentially. So that is a crazy amount of low funding for women's health. Oh yeah, and then also kind of fun, but eye-opening fact, is that studies on erectile dysfunctions outweigh studies on PMS 5 to 1, despite 90% of women being affected by PMS and only 90% of men being affected by erectile dysfunction.
I also saw a thing about male baldness also being more fun.
Yes.
I saw that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's out there.
Yeah.
What is PMS?
PMS is, we said it earlier.
Post-menstrual.
Pre-menstrual.
There you go.
Menstrual,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is basically something that anyone with a uterus, they may experience over their period, essentially. But yeah, that's crazy. And yeah, I actually I wanted to put the male baldness in there, but didn't have enough time. But I did see that recently as well, which is crazy. Yeah. There you go. Right there. So yeah, that was my thing. So thank you all for listening, and I know I just yapped at you about some information. Yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys. Thank you. Right, and so next I would like to introduce Heather, who will be speaking about her disability. Thank you so much. Do you want me to put the photo up?
You can do.
Perfect.